BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, I'm Amanda.
And I'm Natalie.
And we're talking fertility. Because sometimes it's not as easy as just dropping your knickers. We've been there, haven't we, Nat?
Yeah, we have. We're talking about when baby making isn't just about that great sex.
Or even the rubbish.
Or the chore. Or the slog.
Oh, man, when it's a chore.
Or as soon as you get through the door and it's like, ovulating.
Oh, or that whole wearing a condom.
Well, who knew? That's where you went wrong.
We're going to be talking fertility. Our conversations will sometimes contain strong language.
So if you're easily offended, this might not be your cup of tea.
But if it sounds right up your street, then sit back and think of England.
Amanda.
Sit back and enjoy this episode of Sex, Drugs and Lullabies. I'm looking at you two and you're both indoors. Morning. We should probably say hello to the other lovely face we can see. Yeah. Hello.
So we've got lovely Amy Hart with us today. Amy Hart, former Love Island star. Hi. Nice to have you on the podcast. You've been really open about freezing your eggs, haven't you? And it's something on the podcast we've spoken about but not had a specific episode about. So we're really interested to get you on to talk about it. Tell us a little bit about where that came from. You're 28, is that right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, 28.
Yeah. Okay.
And the thing is, everyone goes, oh my God, you're so young, you're so young. But having now been on this journey, I've realised that you do have to, it's like an algebra equation, because you have to be young enough to have like decent quality eggs. But then at the moment, the legislation is just that you can only use them for 10 years. So you have to get the age like just right. So I felt that 28 was good for me because my eggs are still sort of, well, I thought they were sort of good quality. And then I'll use them all by the time I'm 38. So, but I only got 5. So I think I've got to go again. So then I'll have some to use till I'm 39.
You see, I think it's quite interesting that your friends are saying, oh, but you're so young. You're not. When you get to 28, you are starting to get a bit long in the tooth to be a mother. We need to have a reset, don't we? Just because we want it to be true doesn't mean it is true. You know, it was stupid for me to start trying for a baby at 39. And, you know, I was way too old. And I think you're really on it. There aren't many women your age that are on it like this, Amy.
I read an article the other day about, it was a doctor, like a Harley Street doctor, talking about the fact that like women today, they're given unrealistic expectations. So you've got Bridget Nielsen, who had a baby at 54, Rachel Weisz, who had a baby at 48, like all these celebrities that are getting pregnant between sort of 47 and 52, 53. But what they don't tell anyone is that it's with donor eggs. And, you know, and that's not talked about. So then people are like, oh, it's fine because I can have a baby in my 50s. I can have a baby in my late 40s. But then people are very anti using donor eggs.
And the reason you freeze your eggs is you're freezing that age of that egg as well, aren't you? So your eggs will be 28 years old, but you may not use them till you're 38.
Yeah. And ridiculously, this legislation that you're only allowed to keep them frozen for 10 years, it's not as if you get free freezing for 10 years. Like, I have to pay a yearly fee to keep them frozen, like a storage fee. Then I have to pay a defrosting fee. Then I have to pay an implantation fee and a fertilisation fee and all this. So it's not like I'm costing anyone any money. But like my friend, obviously it's too late for me now, but my friend, who's just a very good person, read an article. She's 22. She read an article about how there's a national shortage of egg donors. So she was like, all right, okay, I'll donate my eggs. She's 22 years old and she got 21 eggs.
Wow.
I got 5 at 28. So I'm like, if I was able to do this when I was younger, I would have got a lot better quality eggs. But the legislation is stopping it. And I think, I've always said, like, society vilifies childless women but then doesn't do anything to help them. Like the media, like if you think about Jennifer Aniston, like the word like childless is in every single article about her. Like,
is it? Do you know, that's funny. I didn't know she was. Obviously, you read different stuff to me. You know, I think that's what. But I didn't. It's interesting that you think childless women are vilified. Sorry to interrupt you, but I'd really like you to explain that.
Okay, I think the fact that, like, you know, at work, people that have kids get extra sort of benefits and stuff, and can, like, you know, if you've got a cat that needs to go to the vet, people are like, no, you need to do that in your own time. But if your kids sort of go to the doctor, then they can have it. I think for me it's mainly things like but I think for me it's mainly things like always being asked, like, you know, so why did you decide not to have children? Like Kim Cattrall has said so many times, like, please don't look at me as this like poor sad old lady because I didn't have children. I didn't want them. And she said, but she feels like interviewers especially are always asking her about stuff like that. Jennifer Aniston in every single article talks about, you know, it talks about how she's got no kids and stuff, and how, like, even now she's like in her 50s and it's like Jennifer still longs for a baby, etc.
Oh, gosh, does she then? Because if she does, that's awful that it's constantly mentioned.
Well, she's never talked about it ever.
No.
And the fact that, like, you know, her and Brad Pitt didn't have any kids and he went on to have like hundreds with Angelina Jolie.
Yeah, that was harsh.
They always like compare those, but we don't actually know because Jennifer's never spoken about it. But yeah, I think, you know, and then I've done a lot of research into like the IVF side of things, like, because I'm a very curious person, and so I've got friends doing solo IVF at the moment, and they're on like round 2 or 3 or whatever, and I'm going, also, how much, like, so you get 3 free rounds in the NHS, don't you? And they're like, no, as a solo woman who's on half an income of a couple anyway, you don't get anything free on the NHS. So then I posted about it on my Instagram story, and I had all these people messaging me like, yeah, I can't get it because my husband has got a 25-year-old son that I've never met, so I can't have any help and we just can't afford it. I got pregnant when I was 18. I didn't. Someone else did this to me. Someone else said I got pregnant when I was 18. And so now I can't get IVF because I, like, you know, because I can get pregnant, etc. So, like, it's a postcode lottery as well. Like, if you live, like, if you lived in the next road, you'd get a whole different, like, experience. And it's just so unfair, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Nat and I, when we were going through IVF, I lived in Hull and Natalie lived in Hornsey. We now both live in Hornsey. Come and visit us at the seaside, darling. It's lovely, especially on a day like today. But if Natalie had lived just up the road in Hull, you'd have got a few free rounds and that, wouldn't you? But as it is, you only got one. And I'm not even sure if I'd have lived in the East Riding at the time, if I'd have got my one go because of my age. I didn't need to know because I lived in Hull and it was fine. It was funded as long as I lost weight. But you know, you're right. It's tricky, and I've got family members who've got husbands that have got children from a previous marriage, so it was never a possibility for them. And I thought, no, what about her needs? I totally agree with you, Amy.
And also, I've done like, obviously my videos about what I've had done and stuff. When I talked about me being put under for my egg collection, the amount of people that have messaged me to say I had my egg collection on the NHS and I didn't get put to sleep and I could feel what they were doing, and I had to beg them to give me more painkillers. And I'm like, oh my God, I literally, like, they put my feet in the stirrups, injected me with the thing, and went, right, now just relax. And the next thing I knew, I was back up in the room.
Oh, no, I didn't. No, did we just have a bit of sedation, Nat? Or did we even bother with that?
Yeah, I think, like, it's sedation.
Yeah,
I loved it. I came round, I recorded the same video 5 times. Like, because I was vlogging, I've got 5 of the same kind of video on my phone of me being like, so I'm done, and because I kept forgetting that I'd recorded it and then recording it again.
Do you know, you speaking out is amazing because it's great for other women to learn about their fertility, like a fertility MOT. That's what you went for, isn't it? And that's when you found out about you heading towards an early menopause, wasn't it? If you hadn't had that fertility MOT, you wouldn't have found that out, would you? Maybe it wouldn't have led to egg freezing.
I wouldn't have done. I think as much as it's good that I'm speaking out, I've also scared a lot of people. And I have to be like, calm down. Like, so my mum, my nan and my auntie all went through the menopause at 41. So I knew I had that in my family history. Yes. So, like, for people that are messaging me now going, I'm 28, do what I need to think about this? And I'm like, look at your family history. Look at your mum. Like, what age was your mum when she had you? Because, as well, everyone in my family had all their kids by the time they were 25. So I now have nothing to go on. Like, I could have not got pregnant at 28 because literally everyone has had their kids by the time they're 25. So I had that to go on. So that's what pushed me into going for the fertility MOT. But yeah, I think I wasn't expecting to get that result. I don't think you ever are. Like, I thought, oh yeah, I'll go and have the fertility MOT, and they'll probably tell me that I don't need to freeze my eggs, but I really want to freeze my eggs. That'll be annoying. Da, da, da. And so then when he turned around and said, because the doctor originally was very like, I think you need to wait a few years to freeze your eggs because you've only got 10 years to use them, etc., etc. So to go from that to him sitting in front of me saying, these are your results, yeah, I would support you in freezing your eggs, was like, oh, okay. I mean, I hadn't really thought about that middle one. I thought it was either going to be fine, or I was thinking, if they tell me I need to have a baby right now, that'd be quite cool, actually, because then I'd have an excuse to have a baby right now.
You don't need an excuse if you want one. It's interesting, though, you talk about the fertility MOT. If I'd have had one of those, I'd have come through with glowing colours. Because unless I'm mistaken, my hormones were absolutely fine. I've just got dodgy tubes, which, unless they do a full scan of your...
It's an internal scan. They look at your tubes. They look at... So, like, for example, one of my friends went for one because I went for one. She's 35, and so my AMH level was 8. I thought it was like out of 10. So I was like, oh, lovely. And then he was like, no. Like, you're between, like, people your age that don't have PCOS, you're looking at between 6 and 20. So I was 8.
Right.
And then, but inside, I had a good number of follicles on both sides, and all my insides were fine. So he was like, right now you're okay, but it will just be the short span. Whereas one of my friends, like, she hasn't got PCOS or anything, and her AMH level at 35 is 31. And I'm like, you're really talented, you're really pretty, you're really nice, and you've got that. It's just not fair. Like, you need to have something that's not going for you, and I just don't enjoy it. But she's got, like, they said that she's got like a heart-shaped womb, heart-shaped uterus. So they want to go back and measure it just to check. And I think stuff like that is quite good. But yeah, you're right. Like, one of my friends did message me and say, like, just so you know that, like, I can't remember the exact number, but it's like 35 or 40% of all infertility now is unexplained, which I find really, really frightening, because I'm like, okay, so what's in the water we drink? What is it that comes from our phones that we sleep next to our bodies? Like, because I've got friends who started trying for babies at 21 with their husbands, who couldn't get pregnant, have had to do IVF, and now, like, 7 years later have had a baby. Nothing wrong with her on the surface, nothing wrong with him, just not fertility compatible. If they'd had a fertility MOT, they would have come back with glowing colours. But I do think, you know, you can't predict everything in life, and knowledge is power. So if it's something that is really, like, for me, being a mum is like a non-negotiable. Well, I say it's non-negotiable. I think being, I don't know, like, I don't know how to really describe it. I've never really talked about this before, but for me, because I've been thinking, because I've been talking a lot about, you know, I'd have a baby on my own, I would use surrogacy, I would really happily adopt. I do definitely want to adopt. I'd love to be a foster carer, etc. Like, being a mum figure is a non-negotiable for me. But then I'm like, well, the fertility stuff might not happen. Surrogacy, I'm guessing it's not as easy as I think it's going to be. Adoption and fostering, I've talked quite openly about my mental health. Will that go against me? So for me, on the surface, it's a non-negotiable. Obviously, it might not happen, but so for me, it was a knowledge is power thing, and I needed to know that. But if I would say, like, don't panic to people, because I think I've scared a lot of people.
Natalie, we have spoken, haven't we, to someone, an expert she runs festivals about fertility, and I've forgotten her name, I feel terrible, but she encourages you to think about, that's it, what is motherhood? And what can that look like? It doesn't have to look the same for all of us. And I think what she talks about is massively hopeful. And I think it's interesting that you, as a young woman, are so open to all of those things, like egg donation, like surrogacy, adoption, fostering.
Yeah. I did the Q&A on my Instagram. One of the questions was, because I was saying to people, okay, so cost is a massive thing that people are worried about with egg freezing. And yeah, I'm $8,000 in, because I had 2 failed rounds. Had to buy extra medication the third time, etc. So I'm $8,000 in, which I'm really lucky that my mum and dad paid for that, because they want grandchildren, so they were like, yeah, cool, we'll pay for it. So I was very lucky in that sense. But lots of people, and also because they're in a position where they can do, they're like, if that's going to make you happy, I'd rather I spent that $8,000 on that than $8,000 on you going to Zante or whatever when you were younger. But yeah, so a lot of people were saying like the cost. Now, the London Egg Bank do a programme where if you agree to donate half of your eggs that are taken, you can freeze the other half for yourself for free.
Well, that's interesting.
You get to freeze your eggs. I know not many people. Yeah. Plus they use finance and stuff. So not many people know about this. So I've like sort of spread the word about it. So you harvest your eggs. Half go to you to freeze to use at a later date, and then half go to a couple who can't use their own eggs. And I think that's amazing. Someone put, wouldn't you be scared about donating your eggs because your kids would be running around and you didn't know them? So I did this whole spiel, and I like literally got really into it. I was like proper like angry typing. So I was like, what is your kid? What is your kid? For me, your kid is the kid that lives in your house, that you teach to ride a bike, that you read a book to at night, that you look after. Like, to me, that's your kid. It's not about DNA. Because that's saying that all these amazing stepmums and stepdads that have like stepped up and like taken on their partner's kids, that's not their kid then. And I think there are quite a few narrow-minded people in the world who are like genetics only. Like, I love nothing more than a YouTube family that is like a blended family or family with loads of adoption, where they're like, there's one that I follow called Not Enough Nelsons. They've got 16 kids. It's 9 adopted and 7 biological. And they're like, we don't talk about who's adopted. We don't. And like, because of the ages, the oldest one's 24 and the youngest one's 1. Like, some of the 6-year-olds ask the older ones, like, are you adopted? Am I adopted? Because they don't know. And I love nothing more than watching families like that, because I think, like, we have an open door policy here. Our back door, it's definitely not always unlocked. But hypothetically, if it was, people just like, nobody knocks on our front door. Everyone knows how to get into our house. Like, nobody knocks. If you've been around to our house twice, you're basically part of the family. And I love that. And like you say about you're from Hull, my auntie, in quotation marks, mum's best friend, she's from Hull. And one of my friends was friends with me for 7 years before. She said, so I'm really confused. Like, why has your mum got a sister from Hull? And I was like, oh no, she's not my mum's sister. She's just my mum's best friend. She's like, oh, I genuinely thought she was your auntie because you're like so close. And I was like, yeah, like, yeah.
Yeah. Families are amazing. I mean, I know a family where they fostered a child that had the most extraordinarily tough upbringing, and you know, when she came to them, she couldn't speak, and now when I hear her talk in the same broad accent that they have, that isn't a local accent, I just think, what a wonderful gift they've given that child. They've given that child love and a home, and they've given her the gift of language, and I just think that is completely magical. And if she isn't their daughter, then I'll eat my hat. And I'm totally with you, Amy, totally with you.
And another thing though is I've learnt through all of this, and I just want to say it now because I have probably like scatter mine, and I'll forget it if I don't say it right now, is I always would have used an anonymous donor, because that's what you do. That's what society tells you to do. I've had so many messages from people who are 18, 19, so sort of the first sort of round of donor babies 20 years ago or whatever, who are saying, I think it's amazing what you're doing. My mum did it. However, if you're going to do it, please, please, please use a known donor, because I'm now 19 years old and I will never know where I came from. And I would use a known donor now. Like, I probably wouldn't have thought about it either way. Like, but I've got friends who are going to use donor eggs but want to go abroad to use anonymous donor eggs, because they are like, I don't want, when my child's 18, for them to be able to find their mum, like their egg mum. And I'm like, I'm the opposite. I'm like, do you know what? The more people in a kid's life, the better. If you get to 18 and you end up with 2 mums, amazing.
You're listening to Sex, Drugs and Lullabies.
You can contact the show, tweet us
At Sex, Drugs, Lullaby.
or email us.
fertility@bbc.co.uk.
So if it works for you in the sense that you would go through IVF, say, and you were solo, doing it solo, How do you feel about that? I know we've talked about other options, adoption, fostering and things like that, but you've got your eggs there, so the IVF is an option. And say in a few years down the line you think, you know what, I just can't wait for love anymore. I just want a family of my own. I want to do it on my own. How are you feeling about that?
Fine, because I'm not doing it on my own. Like, I talked about this on Loose Women, and I talked to Mel, who is the Stork and I. She's like a solo motherhood coach. She's amazing. And I was saying to her, you know, when all her posts, she talks about what a massive decision it is to go solo and stuff. And I kept saying, I don't know whether I'm really naive, but I don't see it as a massive decision. I see it as it's an option. You know, you're going to have, like, ketchup or mayo on your burger. I'm like, am I going to wait to find someone, or am I going to have a baby on my own? Like, I see it as such like a normal decision. But for me, it's because it's always been framed really positively by my family. My mum, from when I was about 21, 22, has always been like, I wouldn't want you to miss out on being a mum. If it got to the point where you needed to have one on your own, we'd all be here for you, we'd support you. I know, because like one of our uncles, like biological uncles, was really young when we were all born, so he would have my brother and my cousin Mark round for like lads' nights. So they'd watch football, they'd like get pizza and then have cold pizza. So my brother is like, oh my god, I can't wait till you have kids so I can do stuff like that with them. So I wouldn't be doing it on my own. I have such an amazing network, and also all my friends that have had kids who I've looked after their kids, they're like, we owe you like loads, and you know, we'll all share all the childcare together. So yes, I don't see it as a big thing for me, as a big decision, because I know that I'm not doing it on my own. And it's like swapping out one person for 6 or 7, because I've got friends who've got partners, who've had babies with partners who do absolutely nothing, and they are sort of solo mums with a husband.
But they still have to wash pants and socks and iron shirts and all the rest of it. Yeah. I hear you. The buck would always stop with you, though, wouldn't it, if you did that? I know my mum once said to me, I was really surprised. She said to me years ago, you don't need a man, you know. You don't need a man. I was like, no, mother, I don't want to do it on my own. And I never thought I was going to get married. So I just I coached myself through it in my 30s, even though I was really sad about it. And then, you know, met my husband, and then it was all just a bit of a shame. But you don't, do you? You see lots of single parents, men and women, and they make really good parents. But it's not. This isn't your plan A. You're like me, Amy. You don't want that to be plan A, do you? You want to give the husband, the nice family. You want to give that a go, don't you?
I do, yeah. So I do want to meet someone, and the other day it was really weird. So I am very lucky. So my sort of network, so I had a broadcast list on my WhatsApp for when I was freezing my eggs of people that wanted to know the process, and it was 18 people. So it's like all my best friends, all my family, friends that are going through IVF either solo or in a couple at the moment, friends that have frozen their eggs, friends that want to do it in the future, that want to know everything. So for me, it was so easy to talk about, and I've never been met with any negativity, really. Only people saying, but you're only 28. I explain why, and they go, oh, that's all right then. Last Sunday, I was at an event, like we were filming, all COVID safe, obviously, filming this charity thing. And someone said, oh, you've just frozen your eggs, haven't you? And a couple of people sort of turned around to join the conversation. And I said, yeah, I've frozen my eggs. And then I said, I'm looking at doing solo IVF next October, after my 30th birthday, because who wants to be pregnant on their 30th birthday? Nobody. Nobody. So especially for my Mamma Mia themed birthday party. So next October, so October 2022, my mum is now saying, my mum, who the night before I started my egg freezing said, and you sure you want to do egg freezing? And I was like, yes. Why? She went, no, I mean, you sure you don't want to go straight for a baby? And I was like, no, what, am I going to live here at home? She's like, yeah. So now I've bought my own house, I'm all right. So my mum is now saying, I don't think next year is, like, I don't think you've left it long enough. Like, I think you're writing yourself off too early. So anyway, so we'll discuss that when we get to it, because who knows what I'm going to be doing work-wise next year as well. Like, I don't want to tie myself into anything. Anyway, some people who I've never met before, who don't know me, started on with, but do you not think that a baby deserves a mum and a dad? Like, do you not think that you are, like, really, like, depriving that child of a normal upbringing? And I'm like, well, I've got friends that have got pregnant by their husbands, fiancés and boyfriends who have ended up single mums from the time the baby's 8 weeks old. I as well, like everyone goes about the stigma, but I'm like, there is no stigma because I'm in that sort of group of people. For me, it's not really a stigma, but you know, each their own, I suppose, and everyone has different views.
Yeah, I hear that. So if my neighbour, who sounds like he's about to spark up something really noisy in the garden, if it does persist, I will go indoors. Sorry about that. The perils of trying to sit outside and get some fresh air while you're working. No, I hear you, but you know, I think most people. Oh, I hope I'm not overstepping the mark. I think most people would agree that the ideal situation is 2 parents, isn't it? That's what most people would want, just to share. Not just the burden of school runs and you know, butter in the sandwiches or whatever, but the emotional burden and the decision making burden and all of that. The plan A for most people surely would be to do it with someone. But I think you're right. There's no stigma to plan B.
I would love to like meet someone, but I'm like, if it doesn't happen, that won't stop me, because I know so many amazing single mums or mums who the husband works away all the time. And I know so Mel, who's the Stalker Knife, she has got a huge community of solo mums, so she does like courses about like budgeting and like all your different like sort of how to budget having a child, how much having a child costs. And a lot of her friends who like are in like relationships who've had their kids there, they're like, I would have like benefited from this, like even though I had a baby without with a husband. And they said, you know, nobody ever told me how much a kid cost and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And so she's got like a massive network of women. And when I went on Loose Women originally to talk about it, Syra, who I love, she's amazing, but obviously her experience is having children with her husband. And she said nobody in their right mind would want to be a single mum by choice. So then obviously Mel's got this community of like 500 women who have all been solo mums by choice, who are all like, I was in my right mind actually, and now I have this beautiful child and that I cope really well. So I think people, I said on my Instagram story, you know, if someone tells you they want to freeze their eggs, they can do solo IVF, just be like, that's amazing. What can I do to help and support you? Don't be like, oh, are you sure you can afford it? I had a friend who, when I went for my fertility MOT, unbeknownst to me, followed it all quite intently. And one day she called me, and we're not cally people, we're texty people. And she called me, and I was like, that's weird. So I answered it, and I was like, hello. She was like, hi, just been fertility MOT. I'm like, right. She said, what was your AMH level? I said, 8. She said, right, mine was 2, and they've told me it's now or never. What do I do? And I said, well, like, it's now or never. What do you want to do? And she said, well, I don't want to not be a mum. I said, right, money-wise. And she's like, I would rather be a mum and put it all on credit cards. Like, she's got some savings. She's like, once the savings are gone, I would rather put it on credit cards and be in debt for the rest of my life rather than not be a mum. I was like, well, there's your answer.
Yeah, it's that must be awful news to get that. Oh, mind you, I say that, I suppose I got similar news. That's an amazing gift you gave that woman, your friend, who went for that, because she would have missed her chance if she hadn't been following you.
Yeah, and I think it's, you know, and now sort of that's another thing that our sort of friendships progress to another level, and I love it because like we have that sort of bond, and it's like I've got. So one of my like best friends from school, her sister has done a couple of rounds of IVF. So when I was freezing my eggs, we were talking a lot. And I said to her afterwards, I was like, I know it's a really awful thing to bond over, but like you were always my friend's sister, but now like you're my friend as well because we've bonded over this.
Well, we say
she's
that
like, yeah, I
all
wish
the
we
time.
didn't.
Like me and Amanda, we always say it's like a fertility family. We all have our different stories and different endings and things, but we've all like had that kind of bond in the sense that we've struggled with our fertility, and you know, it's really nice that we can all just share our stories and help each other through it.
Oh, I think we one of the it was Leanne that we interviewed. She's furious she wasn't given better advice as a young woman. You know, she wants to go to all the schools and tell all the, you know, if you've got the money, freeze your eggs now at 18, you know, and you know, I just, she's kind of got a point. And the thing is, we are being sold, like you said right at the start, that you can have it all. You can't have it all. You can't have the career and the family and be sane. You can't, you've got, something's got to give somewhere, hasn't it? You've got, something has to be less than it could be in order for you to have a little bit of everything. And we can't have all this fun time through our 30s and then still be a mum.
Yeah. And like my one of my friends said the other day about his girlfriend and said like, oh yeah, her boss, which is what she's aiming for, earns £1 million a year. And I was like, is her boss a bloke though? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, well, like, you want to have kids and stuff. I was like, I don't want to be I don't want to be that negative person that says you can't have it all. But realistically, for that £1 million, like, nobody gives you £1 million for free. Nobody gives you £1 million for part-time working. And if you want these 4 kids you're talking about, she's not going to be able to work to the same level as a man. And that's a really unfeminist thing to say, but it's true.
Well, it's just true. It's just true, isn't it? It's as simple as that. It's just true. And, and I kind of think, my sleep's going a bit funny at the minute, and I kind of think, I'm really struggling. Is it my hay fever, or is it the menopause starting to rear its head? All of this, and you think, well, but men don't have to deal with that. And we've got to deal with all this stuff. And like once a month, if you struggle, you're really not on top of your game. And all of this, we've got loads of stuff that we have to deal with that men don't have to deal with, haven't we? We can't perform the same.
Yeah, but also on the flip side of that, I've had so many messages from guys being like, I'm a single guy, I haven't met the right woman, I'd love to be a dad, but there isn't a way really for men to be single dads.
Oh, well, we know a guy locally, don't we, Natalie?
Really?
He's going through surrogacy, and he's being very open, sharing his journey. I'll try and find him on social media for you, so you can look him up.
His name is Wayne Jackson, I think.
Wayne Jackson, right? Let me try and find him on Twitter. Yeah, he's a performance artist as well. I went round Hull during City of Culture in his taxi. It was a performance art. It was really good. Let me see if I can find him.
That's amazing. But I think, like, obviously surrogacy costs money, doesn't it? Like, costs loads of money.
Yeah.
But I think as well, and also people, I think there's even less, like, sort of acceptance for, if like a guy was like, oh yeah, I want to adopt a child, people would be like, why? Like, that's weird. That's weird.
I think there's probably less time for men getting help than for women, even though you were saying about the lack of help for women.
As women, we're really open about, majority of the time we're really open about our fertility, and like it helps that we have these conversations, and Amy, you're having these conversations as well, so we get it out there more, so we can talk about it more. But men don't necessarily, they shy away from that kind of talk, don't they? They just don't want to talk about sperm and their fertility. They think they're all right, Men just think when there is a fertility problem in the couple relationship, they instantly think it's the woman's fault anyway, regardless.
Yeah.
So they tend to shy away from standing up about it. And like you went out of the way. I mean, obviously you've got your family history, but to go get a fertility MOT, men would probably never think of doing that. I'd love to hear a man that's actually gone and thought.
My brother actually, it's only because of me doing it. My brother and his fiance were talking about potentially, because she's older than him. So my brother's 25 and his girlfriend or fiance is 33. So, but she's like a big time like solicitor. She's my partner of her firm, etc. So they're like, maybe we should go and check, sort of get ourselves both checked out to know like sort of what time constraints we're on.
Yeah, I think maybe gay men are more open about it, Nat. Do you think? That, you look at the two dads, and I think there's a lot more openness there. What my friend James would call the rah-rah tits football brigade, they struggle to be open with it. And I'm sorry, fellas, I don't mean to be generalising, but I think it's probably true.
Yeah,
I think though for guys as well, like as much as it is harder for them to like talk about wanting to be like a solo dad or whatever, they do have in the example of like Jon Snow and Des O'Connor, they do have forever to be a dad. Like they can literally be a dad at 85.
It is interesting. Well, it's because they make it fresh every day, don't they?
Yeah.
We've had ours since before we were born, haven't we? We've just got a limited stash, and that's it. We're just all living so long, and like you say, Amy, maybe our environmental factors and that aren't helping. But yeah, there is a TikTok. We have to, as women, if we want to be mothers, we've got to be aware.
Oh yeah, definitely. I was just going to ask you, Amy, do you know what the chances of conceiving are using your frozen eggs compared to if you just had a natural cycle, or whether you just went with IVF? Are the chances
it's not very high, I don't think.
Right.
But it's better than zero. I think maybe like 16 or 24. These numbers are reminding me. I should probably look that up. Let's Google it. I'll Google it.
Well, that's good.
Now. So 18% of your own frozen eggs and 30% with frozen donor eggs, because obviously donor eggs are only like the tip-top quality ones.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I see. All right. Well, it's like you said, it's something, isn't it? It's your insurance policy.
Yeah.
It's there for if you need it. I just hope you don't have to use them. I hope you get that ending that you want, that family that you want, and you get it naturally. I mean, that's what we all ever want, don't we, really? But I think the fact that you've come out and spoken about it is just, I mean, I know you said you frightened some people, but I think in the majority of cases, I think you've enlightened people and opened their eyes up and just got them thinking about, especially if they've been putting off having a baby because of their career or whatever, to just kind of get on with it. You know,
I had a friend message me after Loose Women last week saying, you know, I'm 40 next month. My boyfriend's 10 years younger than me. He's not ready for kids yet. I don't know what to do. Like, should I go for fertility MOT? Because I'm worried that by the time I get to the age, the time he's ready, I'll be too old. And I was a bit like, well, just tell him if he's going to go out with someone 10 years older than him, soz. But that's just how it is. But she was like, I'll go for the fertility. I actually said, and this is really bad, I was like, go for the fertility MOT. Doesn't need to know the answers. Just say what you want, and then you can use it as leverage. And she was like, yeah, no. So, okay, sorry, that's just me. That's just my warped sense of humour, or sense of morals. But yes, she was like, I'll go for one and hopefully they'll tell me I'm fine. But that's for me as well. Like, I'd be like, well, what do you want more? Like, to be with him or to have a baby? Because if it's going to be one or the other, what are you going to choose?
Exactly. Yeah.
We've had this conversation before, haven't we, Natalie? Bad relationship choices and, and just being with the wrong guy and, people that perhaps don't want to support you through the process, and how at some point you have to say, well, no, I've got to choose between, I can't wait for this person to let me down and not be part of this, because actually I'm running out of time. I'm just going to have to ditch him.
Yeah. My friend had a baby on her own at 30, and she did it because she said that when you're dating in your late 20s and early 30s, you let a lot of red flags slide that you wouldn't normally, because you're thinking, I've got to have a baby. She's like, so then I had the baby on my own, so then I can date and I know exactly what I want from a guy, and if they don't tick the box, that's fine, on to the next, and I've got my baby and I'm fine.
Interesting. Yeah, it takes courage though, doesn't it, to do that?
It does.
I think you're massively courageous for doing what you're doing. I think you're brilliant for talking about it as well, Amy. Good for you.
Thank you.
Especially in the position you're in, because, as a Love Island contestant, there'll be a lot of young women who'll know exactly who you are, who probably want to look just like you look in a bikini and want to sort of follow your example in all sorts of different ways. Hats off to you, darling. I really admire you for what you're doing.
I mean, I came unstuck with that last night of all, like, just randomly. So I saw a post saying, like, that little bump at the bottom of your stomach is your uterus. And I was like, oh, yeah, I've thought that. So I shared it on my story, and I was like, no matter how thin I am, I've always got this, like, little kangaroo pouch at the bottom of my thing. But it's because I've got a tilted cervix that obviously then pushes everything out. And, like, my mum's always said to me, like, that's where a baby goes. And I'm like, well, can it go away until I need it? And so I posted it, didn't think anything more of it, went back to my phone like half an hour later, and all these people were like, oh my God, I've got a tilted cervix and I've always had that bump, and now I realise what it is. Thank you for letting me know. And I was like, oh my God. So I posted another one like, right guys, I'm not actually a doctor. He's been diagnosed by AIMS. Like, this isn't, like, please don't take my word as gospel. Like, but, you know, if you've got a bump, lovely, and then you have to, because it's Instagram, you have to cover all bases so you don't offend anyone. And I was like, if you're lucky enough to have a completely flat stomach, I'm not saying you're not going to protect your future child. So I'm sure you'll be an amazing mum. Like, do you know what I mean? But so you have to be really careful what you do post, because people then start diagnosing themselves based on your Instagram.
I'm just so glad I've only got 130
scary.
followers on Instagram, to be fair.
Yeah.
Sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah. I don't know how many I've got. I've got 2 accounts, haven't I? One for doing up my rec and one for just general. Yeah, I've no idea how many followers I've got.
From us to you, Instagram superstar, and we've only got 100 odd followers.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and talking to us.
Thank you for having me.
We've just loved every minute of speaking to you. Thank you. You are an inspiration.
Thank you.
Yeah.
To women out there. You really are.
I think you are, and I really hope you realise your dream of being a mum, however it happens and whenever it happens. I think it sounds like that small person will be coming into an absolutely charming family, so good luck to you all.
Have you been gripped?
I have. I want to come back and listen to another one. Do you?
Well, indeed, and you never need to miss an episode of Sex, Drugs and Lullabies. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Then every new episode will come straight to your phone as soon as it's released.
You can follow and tweet us at Sex, Drugs, Lullaby, or email us fertility@bbc.co.uk. And go on, share your stories.